There's this old Chinese story, right, about a young bloke who trekked all the way to the mountains to learn from this really wise master, name of Lao Tzu. The young fellow was proper frustrated because he'd been trying to get good at sword fighting for ages, years even, but his progress was dead slow. He'd practice his guts out every single day, pushing himself until his muscles were screaming and his brain felt like mush. And yet, other students who didn't seem to put in half the effort were getting better than him. So, Lao Tzu takes the student down to the river nearby and points to this massive rock sitting right in the middle of the water. The master asks, "See how the water flows all around this rock?" "Eh?" The student nods. Then Lao Tzu points to the smooth, curved shape of the rock and says, "This rock, it wasn't always like this. It used to be sharp and rough as guts. The water shaped it, smoothed it out over time. The water never fought the rock, mate. It just kept flowing day in, day out, year after year. Now," he says, "tell me, which is stronger, the hard rock or the soft water?" The student, he wanted to say the rock, fair dinkum, but he couldn't ignore what he was seeing. The soft water had carved this rock and countless others all through the valley. It had even shaped the whole mountain over donkey's years. Lao Tzu just smiles and says, "You're trying to be like the rock, hard and forceful. But if you want to be truly strong, you've got to learn to be like water instead." This simple little lesson about water became one of the most important teachings in Taoist philosophy. Most people go at tough tasks by gathering up all their willpower, clenching their jaw, and pushing harder. When they hit a roadblock, they just push even harder. When things don't work out, they reckon they need to chuck even more effort at the situation. This approach feels right because our culture tells us that success needs constant struggle and force. But Lao Tzu discovered something different by just watching water. He noticed that the softest thing in nature was also one of the most powerful. Water might look like one of the weakest things in the world. You can stick your hand straight through it easy as no resistance at all. It hasn't got any hardness, no sharp edges, no weapons to fight with. Yet, this same soft water carves its way through solid rock over time. Water shapes entire mountains and carves out deep valleys across the land. Drop by drop, year after year, it breaks apart stone that seems permanent, unchangeable. Lao Tzu wrote in the Tao Te Ching that nothing in the world is softer than water, yet nothing's better at overcoming the hard and strong. This simple act of watching water became the foundation of what we might call water mind, a way of tackling difficult tasks that looks weak on the surface but turns out to be incredibly powerful in the long run. The first principle of water mind is that water never fights directly against anything blocking its path. When water comes up against a big rock sitting in the middle of a stream, it doesn't try to push through it with brute force. Instead, it flows around the rock naturally. When it meets a solid wall blocking its way, it doesn't just bash against that wall over and over. Instead, it finds the tiniest cracks and seeps through them slowly. When it faces a steep cliff dropping below, it doesn't throw itself against the stone trying to move it. Instead, it falls with gravity and wears the rock away slowly through constant, gentle contact. This behavior might sound like giving up or always taking the easy way out, but you watch water more carefully over time and you'll see it always reaches where it's going eventually. Rivers always find their way to the sea, no matter how many things get in the way. You can use this principle for a difficult project at work or school. Most people tackle hard work by trying to force their way through every problem they meet. They hit a snag and immediately try to solve it through sheer hard effort and willpower. This direct approach creates a heap of stress and often leads to complete burnout. The water mind approach asks a different question when facing problems. Where's the natural path through this challenge? Where are the cracks I can flow through without forcing things? What parts of this problem can I work around instead of fighting directly? This approach doesn't mean shunning hard work or taking shortcuts. Water's constantly moving and flowing forward. It never stops or gives up. but it moves along the path of least resistance while still steadily heading where it wants to go. A student using water mind might look at a difficult subject and, instead of forcing themselves to understand everything at once, they find the one small part that makes sense and start there. They flow into the subject through the natural opening rather than trying to break down the entire wall all at once. The second principle teaches us that water changes its shape to fit any container it enters. Pour water into a cup and it becomes cup-shaped. Pour it into a bottle and it becomes bottle-shaped. Water's got no fixed form of its own. It changes constantly to match whatever situation it finds itself in. This flexibility isn't weakness or a lack of character. Mind you, this ability to change is exactly how water gets into places that stiff things can't reach. A solid block of wood can't flow through a narrow pipe, but water can go anywhere because it changes shape. Most people approach challenges with rigid ideas about how things should go. They make a detailed plan and then get proper frustrated when reality doesn't match what they planned. They've got a fixed idea about the right way to solve a problem and can't see other options that might work better. The water mind asks you to hold your goals firmly, but hold your methods loosely. Keep the final destination fixed in your mind, but the path to get there can be changed based on what actually works in reality. Imagine you're learning a new skill like drawing or playing a musical instrument. The stiff approach says you must practice in a specific way for a specific amount of time each day. If life throws a spanner in the works and interrupts this perfect schedule, you feel like a complete failure. The water mind approach says your goal is to improve at this skill over time through steady practice. Some days you practice for an hour when your energy's high. Some days you practice for just 5 minutes when time's limited. Some days you watch others perform and learn through watching. The water flows around things, blocking it like time and energy while still moving steadily toward the sea. The third principle reminds us that water is naturally patient in its work. It doesn't rush or hurry towards where it's going. A river doesn't try to reach the ocean in a single day. It flows steadily and constantly without worrying about how long the journey takes. The deep canyon walls that water carves into the landform over thousands of years. Each day the water does its small work of flowing over a rock. The rock doesn't visibly change in a day or a week or even a year, but over long periods of time, the constant, gentle pressure creates huge changes that seem impossible. This patience is perhaps the hardest part of water mind for modern people to accept. We live in a culture that expects fast results from everything. We want to see visible progress every single day. We get disheartened when a week of hard effort produces no visible change. But the Taoist understanding recognizes that real change happens slowly through building up. The constant, gentle pressure of daily practice creates more lasting change than occasional bursts of intense effort followed by long breaks. Think about someone trying to get physically fit and healthy. The forceful approach involves extreme workouts that leave you completely buggered and sore, followed by several days of recovery where you do nothing. This creates a pattern of intensity followed by collapse. The water mind approach involves moderate exercise every single day without exception. Each individual day feels relatively easy. You don't push yourself to complete exhaustion. But over months and years, this steady flow creates remarkable strength and health that the intense approach can't match. The fourth principle is what Lao Tzu called Wu Wei, which translates poorly into English as non-doing or effortless action. This phrase sounds like doing nothing at all, but it actually means something more interesting and useful. It means acting in harmony with the natural flow of things rather than fighting against them. Water demonstrates Wu Wei perfectly through its movement. It never seems to struggle or strain against anything, yet it gets its work done over time. Wu Wei appears in your life when you stop forcing things to happen your way and start working with how things naturally want to unfold. A simple example shows this principle clearly. When you try to force yourself to fall asleep through willpower, sleep runs away from you. The harder you try to make it happen, the more awake you become. But when you relax and let sleep come naturally on its own, it arrives easily without struggle. This is Wu Wei in action. You don't make sleep happen through force, you create the right conditions where sleep happens naturally by itself. You can apply the same principle to learning or working. Forcing yourself to focus through pure willpower creates strain and mental fatigue. But creating an environment where focus happens naturally works much better. Remove distractions from your space, work during times when your natural energy is high, take short breaks before you get too tired. These actions allow focused work to flow naturally without constant battle. The work still gets done, but it doesn't feel like fighting a war. The fifth principle teaches that water is humble in how it moves through the world. It always seeks the lowest place available. It flows downward into valleys while everything else tries to climb upward to peaks. Lao Tzu wrote that water is content with the low places that most people reject as unworthy. This humility gives water its true power. By going to low places, water gathers together. By gathering together, it becomes deep. By becoming deep, it becomes powerful enough to move anything. Rivers form in valleys, not on mountain tops. In practical terms, this principle means being willing to start small and simple rather than trying to leap to advanced levels immediately. Someone learning to write might feel embarrassed to write simple sentences when they imagine creating complex books someday. But Water Mind says to start where you actually are right now, even if that place feels low and humble. Write the simple sentences without shame. Flow naturally from where you are now. Depth and power develop through patient building up of small efforts, not through trying to be impressive from the very beginning. These 5 principles work together as a complete system. Non-resistance allows you to flow around things blocking you instead of beating against them uselessly. Flexibility allows you to change your approach based on what actually works in reality. Patience allows you to keep going over long periods without burning out from being too tired. Wu Wei allows you to work in harmony with natural rhythms instead of fighting them constantly. And humility allows you to start simple and build naturally rather than forcing yourself to perform beyond your current ability. Here's how you can begin practicing Water Mind today with your own challenges. Choose one difficult task or project you're currently struggling with. Now ask yourself these questions honestly. Where am I forcing something that doesn't want to move? What thing blocking me am I beating against when I could simply flow around it? What fixed approach am I holding on to that I could change? What am I trying to rush that actually needs more patience? Where am I fighting natural rhythms instead of working with them? And where am I too proud to start small and simple? The answers to these questions show you exactly where to apply Water Mind principles in your life. You don't need to change everything at once with huge effort. Water itself works slowly and patiently. Pick just one principle and practice it for a full week. Notice what happens when you stop forcing and start flowing. Notice what opportunities open up when you change instead of insisting on one stiff path. Notice how keeping going becomes easier when you remove the strain of constant battle. Lao Tzu lived over 2,000 years ago, but his watching of water applies perfectly to modern challenges. We face different problems than ancient Chinese farmers faced, but human nature hasn't changed. We still tire ourselves out through constant forcing. We still create unnecessary suffering by resisting what is rather than working with what is. The Water Mind offers a different path forward, more natural, more sustainable, and ultimately more effective. The soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the stiff, the patient outlasts the rush. This isn't abstract philosophy for its own sake. This is practical wisdom for doing hard things without destroying yourself in the process.